Three teenage boys laughed loudly as they surrounded a terrified puppy, completely unaware that someone dangerous to their cruelty was watching. The dog, a young German shepherd, trembled in the mud, its small body shaking as dirt was kicked toward its face. The laughter echoed through a quiet corner of Balboa Park, hidden from the main walkways. What the boys didn't realize was that Nolan Carlson, a battle-hardened Navy SEAL on mandatory leave, had already noticed them. Nolan had come to the park to escape noise, not to find trouble. At 34, his body carried the calm tension of a man trained for chaos. Civilian life felt slower than combat, yet harder to endure. The gray marine layer above San Diego suited him just fine. Muted, quiet, familiar. He was about to sit on a bench near the eucalyptus trees when a sharp yelp cut through the air. Instinct took over. His posture changed, his focus locked in, and his feet moved silently off the path. Through the trees he saw the boys circling the puppy like predators. One of them mocked the dog for being unable to run, while another raised his foot threateningly. Nolan didn't shout or charge. He stepped forward calmly, entering their circle like a shadow slipping into light. "That's enough," he said quietly. The boys turned, surprised by the sudden presence. The leader sneered, calling Nolan an old man and dismissing the puppy as worthless. Nolan closed the distance in a single step. His voice dropped, heavy with authority earned through years of combat. "I wasn't asking," he said. "Walk away. Now." Something in Nolan's eyes stripped the bravado from the boys instantly. Fear replaced laughter. One by one they backed away, muttering excuses before fleeing toward the main path. Nolan didn't watch them leave. His attention was already on the puppy. He crouched down slowly, softening his presence. The dog whimpered but didn't retreat. Nolan spoke gently, letting the animal smell his hand. The shaking eased. He checked the puppy carefully, noticing an injured back leg, likely sprained. He cleaned the mud from its face with a handkerchief, his movements calm and practiced. The puppy rested its head against his knee, trusting him completely. Moments later, tires screeched nearby. A black limousine pulled up aggressively. A woman burst out, panic written across her face. She ran toward them shouting the puppy's name, Titan. This was Iris Vance, billionaire CEO of Vance Robotics, and in that moment she was nothing more than a terrified dog owner praying she wasn't too late. Iris dropped to her knees beside Nolan, barely able to breathe as she checked Titan. Relief flooded her when the puppy barked weakly and wagged his tail. Tears streamed down her face as she explained how Titan had slipped his collar while with a dog walker. Nolan listened quietly, assuring her the dog would recover but needed a vet immediately. They went straight to a nearby clinic. Nolan stayed, silent and steady, until the veterinarian confirmed Titan would fully heal. Iris, regaining her professional composure, pulled out her checkbook. Without hesitation, she offered Nolan a large sum of money, treating the rescue like a business transaction. Nolan refused. He told her plainly that he didn't act for money and criticized her for trusting the wrong people with something that depended on her. His words cut through her polished confidence, leaving her shaken and ashamed. Instead of arguing, Iris apologized. Then, unexpectedly, she asked him to dinner, not as payment but as thanks. Later that evening, Nolan arrived at Iris's cliffside mansion in La Jolla. Before relaxing, he instinctively assessed the property's security. The house looked impressive but felt exposed. Inside, Nolan met Sophie, Iris's young niece, who had lost her parents years earlier. Unlike most strangers, Sophie didn't fear Nolan. He knelt to her level and spoke softly, earning her trust within seconds. Dinner was tense and awkward until alarms suddenly blared through the house. Red lights flashed. Security guards rushed in, panicked and disorganized. Nolan calmly analyzed the situation, quickly identifying the alarm as a false trigger caused by wind and faulty sensor calibration. He shut the system down in seconds. Then he did something worse. He dismantled their entire security setup verbally. He pointed out blind spots, weak access codes, useless sensors, and poor guard discipline. Iris realized she had spent millions on the illusion of safety. She offered Nolan a consulting role on the spot. Reluctantly, Nolan agreed under strict conditions. He would run security his way without interference. Over the next weeks, the house transformed. Nolan trained the staff, fixed vulnerabilities, and worked closely with Titan, turning the once frightened puppy into a confident protector. As days passed, Nolan became a constant presence. Iris found herself watching him train Titan from her office window. Sophie followed him everywhere. What began as professional respect slowly grew into something deeper. Quiet conversations, shared coffee, unspoken understanding. But peace never lasts in fragile worlds built on wealth and power. The fragile balance shattered with the arrival of Cordelia Vance, Iris's grandmother. Wealthy, cold, and controlling, Cordelia immediately disliked Nolan. She saw him as unrefined, dangerous, and unworthy of standing near her granddaughter. Her disapproval turned into quiet hostility. At a high-profile charity gala, Cordelia publicly humiliated Nolan by comparing him to wealthy heirs and reducing him to hired help. The insult wasn't just aimed at Nolan, it was meant to put Iris back in her place. Later, Cordelia took things further. She hired a private investigator and presented Iris with Nolan's heavily redacted military file. She painted him as unstable, violent, and dangerous. Then she issued an ultimatum: fire Nolan or lose company funding, and possibly custody of Sophie. Nolan overheard everything. Understanding the threat was real, he made a decision that broke his own heart. He walked into the room, resigned on the spot, and pretended he didn't care. He lied, saying the job bored him, saying he wanted action elsewhere. Iris was devastated, but Nolan walked away to protect Sophie. 30 days passed. The house grew empty. Sophie withdrew. Titan waited by the gate every day. Iris buried herself in work, trying to ignore the silence Nolan left behind. Cordelia replaced Nolan with an expensive security firm that relied entirely on technology. They failed. A mercenary group infiltrated the estate during a storm, killing guards and kidnapping Iris and Sophie. Titan tried to defend them but was kicked aside. As the attackers dragged them toward an extraction van, lightning illuminated a familiar truck blocking the gate. Nolan had returned. He moved like a ghost through the rain, silently eliminating mercenaries one by one. When the leader used Sophie as a shield, Nolan spoke calmly, triggering a training cue. Sophie dropped instantly. Nolan took the shot. The leader fell, but not before firing one last bullet. Nolan threw himself in front of Iris and Sophie, taking the hit. The bullet tore through Nolan's shoulder as he shielded them. He collapsed, blood soaking into the stone beneath him. Chaos ended as Cordelia fired the final shot that sent the mercenary into the ocean. For the first time in her life, Cordelia knelt in the mud beside a man she once despised, desperately trying to save him. At the hospital, doctors confirmed Nolan would survive. The injury ended his combat career but not his purpose. When Nolan awoke, his first concern was Sophie's safety. Iris held his hand, tears falling freely. Cordelia stood quietly at the foot of the bed. Then she did something unimaginable: she apologized. She tore up the legal threats, withdrew all objections, and admitted she had been wrong. Wealth, she realized, had never been real protection. Months later, Nolan officially left the Navy. Together, he and Iris founded a private security firm built on instinct, discipline, and human judgment, not illusion. Titan became their symbol of resilience. Sophie healed, growing braver every day. On a quiet La Jolla beach, surrounded by close friends and ocean waves, Iris and Nolan stood together, not as CEO and soldier, not as protector and protected, but as equals. The man who once walked away to save a family had finally come home.